main cubes of 2021, and before I start, this is actually a new desk. So the background is going to look different from 2021 onwards, and what the new desk has that the old desk doesn't is it has its own light bulb. So this is what it looks like without the light, and this is what it looks like with the light. So like the natural light is variable, sometimes it's too bright, sometimes it's too dark, but really with this, the lighting can be much more consistent. And yeah, just a short tour of the desk. We have this selfie stick that's put underneath a book, and in front I can load a camera here. So this is basically responsible for most of my camera angles. Even on my old desk, like I've done this a lot. The new desk is just as capable of having the same setup. And like this particular camera is actually the one that some people have complained about the audio quality when I first switched to it. So nowadays, actually, I don't really want to talk when using this camera. I usually, if I'm talking in a video, I'll be filming with my iPhone. And like for just plain solve videos, I will be using this camera because it's longer. And below that is just basically all my cubes. So on this side are actually cubes that have been borrowed from CubeWorks, so it will be a changing group. So like depending on what batch I have, currently this is the Shadowv2 and the Yuxin Huanglong 13. I've returned both the 12x12s, but basically every time I see the box, I'll just return whatever I have here and like borrow whatever new batch is promoting or letting me test at that point in time. And then for this side, it's just my mains. There are loops here, and yeah, these are actually my 2x2 to 10x10 mains without the 9x9 because I don't actively do 9x9. I think this one, 2x2, not a surprise. This one has stayed on for a very long time. For really smooth, stable, and it gets most of the relays done. And relays are more or less the only reason why I really care that much about 2x2. For 3x3, I use an MF3RS2. This one is also has been around for a very long time. And like the main reason why I haven't really switched is like I feel that 3x3 hasn't really moved that much. Honestly, I feel I can take the ESL V1 from 2016 and magnetize one and then use it to fight against like other people that are using the more modern and newer cubes. And I think if you do something like that, you won't really be missing out that much. There are definitely more options to suit like the different turning styles, but like other than that's like the only real big advantage there is from 2017 onwards. I would say the magnets are pre-installed into your cube already, and then from 2019 onwards you end up having adjustable springs and adjustable magnets, and also reproduction of that same technology at a lower price. And then you have cubes like the RS3 2020, which is like all of those factors combined into one. Minus the magnet one, which debatably you can actually do and undo the plus mod at will. I mostly like this cube because it has quite a solid, smooth and tight feel, and it's quite stable, and I can still pull off like a 16 or even 15 average on this, which like if I were to pull out a much newer or a much more expensive cube, I can quite safely say that I will either get the same time, maybe a better time that's really not noticeable. But there is one cube that can kind of threaten this one, which is the Weilong 3. I actually like the feel of the Weilong 3 better than the RS2, and I even set my PB single an average of 5 during the time when I was borrowing a Weilong 3. So as of now, I definitely don't intend to switch, but if I end up in a situation where my main cube is lost or destroyed, the replacement cube is definitely not going to be the same model. And I wouldn't say that just for 3x3, there will be a few other events where I would say the same. For 4x4, this is a Weilong 4M with the Aochuang setup. Like this cube actually took over the GTS1 M. It's a relatively recent takeover, which happened within the year 2020 itself. But one unusual thing is it's not a very fast takeover. I went through a very long period of time where both this cube and the GTS1 were co-mains at the same time, and I was switching between the two until this one eventually won. So this one, I mostly like it because it's 59mm and it's a really fast cube. So okay, the magnets are strong, but when you run from point to point, it's very fast. It's just that it stops hard because of the strong magnets. But the strong magnets also means it's quite reliable for like doing a lot of like elks. And I do really just prefer weaker magnets in my turning style, and the main reason why this has strong magnets is just that they were what I have at that point in time, so I don't really have a choice. So this cube it has stickers on it, which I do prefer a stickerless cube, but the stickerless version is frosted. So yeah, that will be more like a -1 point to the Weilong 4M, but I have tried a few other Weilong 4Ms, including like polished ones or the PVC coated one, which are like definitely much better than mine, and of course the factory magnetized one has weaker magnets. So definitely like my Weilong 4 is not the best Weilong 4 out there, and there's also one other cube that can kind of threaten this, which is the Aohui WR, which lands me in the same situation as what my 3x3 is, which is like if I lost this cube, it's going to get replaced by something different. But then as long as I still have this cube and it's in good condition, it's just more or less going to stick as my main. Okay, for 5x5, I used the Aochuang WR M, and this one is also a takeover that happened within 2020 itself. The cube that it took over from was the Wuque 5M. So I would actually classify the Aochuang WR as probably my favorite N/N cube out of the entire bunch. What I really like about it is just the weaker magnets, especially the magnets are weaker than both the MGC and the Wuque, which is my main point for choosing this one over the other two. Like, it generally just feels less snappy when I turn it, and yes, I can really it just feels softer in my hands, and I can actually turn a lot faster with less effort to turn, and overall this cube dropped my average by about 4 seconds compared to my Wuque, and that's actually quite similar to the amount at which the Wuque beat my Weichuang, which is my previous main before that. One thing about this cube is that I actually underestimated it out of the box. So if you watch my MGC versus Wuque 5 versus Aochuang WR M video, I said that this cube isn't really that stable and kind of flexes a bit too much, but I feel that was actually a premature judgment, and the cube is actually much better than what I described. It's actually a lot more stable after I properly set it up and break it in and got used to the cube. For 6x6, I used the MGC. This was also another takeover that happened in 2020 itself, and my previous main before this was the Aoshi GTS, and like compared with the Aoshi GTS, like I would say the MGC is a lot more stable and it's just a lot lighter and faster. So definitely dropped my average by, I would say, about at least 3 seconds, and like, it also made the solving experience much more enjoyable. And I would also say like the advantages it has over the Aoshi are quite similar to its advantages over the Shadowv2 I, which is that other cube that can kind of threaten this one because I can solve it in quite a similar time. With the Shadowv2 I really like the 64mm choice, but I think the other features like the faster speed of the MGC, and I do find that it's a lot less flexible than the Shadowv2, and I think these are kind of my main reasons for liking this one better. For 7x7 I used the Aohui GTS, and this one has been around since 2019, like the beginning of 2019, and like it took over the MF7S, and it dropped my average by like 30 seconds compared to that. Because at that time I think I was like 410 on the MF7S, and then after switching to this I dropped all the way to 340, and after using this for like a whole 2 years or so, I dropped even further to 320, and when I pick up my MF7S again, I'm still not 410 with that. So this cube really made a lot of difference compared to that. And also at the beginning of 2019, I think this is quite well known on, like, if you have followed my channel enough, and like the video is just out there, you can go and watch it. But I borrowed this cube together with a Haze and a Spark all at the same time. All three are brand new, and I just solved on them and like decided to buy one and return the other two, and that's how I kept the output. The other two actually did add quite major improvements over the MS7S, but like comparing all the 3 times, I actually got the fastest on this one. What I really like about this cube is just its super stability. It's just really solid, and it has the best pop and deforming lockup prevention I've ever seen in any cube, because it's a literal physical structure inside the cube that's going to stop the pieces from coming out, and also preventing the pieces from moving into places that they shouldn't be. And it also has a really nice smooth feel. But the one negative thing I have to say about this cube is just that it's heavy. So yeah. So, which leads to the one cube that can threaten this, which is the MGC7. Like, I would say the MGC7 is a cheaper cube, it's much lighter, and it has like majority of the same benefits as the Aohui. Maybe except the anti-popping one, which is really a very minor difference, because like the MGC7's anti-popping mechanism, while it's not the same anti-popping mechanism as Aohui, it's also a really strong one. 7x7 is in a similar position to my 3x3 and 4x4, where if my current cube is still working and in good condition, I'm unlikely to switch away. But let's say if it's lost for whatever reason, the replacement is going to be the MGC7, and it's not going to be a second Aohui. Okay, 8x8. So this particular cube itself might be one of my more famous cubes, MF8M with the Yuxin Unicorn 4x4 springs. In 2018, my main before that was the Shadowv2 I, which is really no comparison, because that cube is 83 mm and it's much less stable than this, and it's a really old model. Yeah. Like, my friend who borrowed this cube once actually even compared this to a Spark, but I would say that at the bare minimum is at least Wuque and Huanglong 7 level. Basically, the whole setup on this cube is what you would imagine the Yuxin Green 6x6 would be set up back when that was the best 6x6, and yeah, which is spring swap, magnetized, and tighten the springs a lot. And like after tightening a lot, it minimizes the pops. The spring swap speeds up the cube a lot, and yeah. Basically, this cube is quite nice and might possibly be one of the best 8x8s in Singapore or in the world, because like the spring swap is not really that common. Most people will just magnetize it, and one unusual thing about my magnets is that I used weaker magnets than what most people would use, and I didn't magnetize the inner because the inner without magnets is actually same turning force as the outers with magnets. So I basically have quite a fast turning and quite a consistent feeling cube because of that. The cube that can kind of threaten this would be the Cyclone Boys G8, but I don't really know that much about it either. But there are people who have said that the base quality of the Cyclone Boys G8, meaning without any setup, like that would be better than the base quality of the MF8. But I don't know this. I don't really know that for myself. That is more like what I heard from other people. The one negative point which I don't think other 8x8s are going to address either is the corner cutting. The pieces are, in my opinion, they are a little bit too square for my liking, and I do think it's actually possible to design another 8x8 and make the pieces a bit rounder than this. For 9x9, I'm using the Yuxin Huanglong, but the box is quite big and bulky box, so I kind of threw away the box in day one, and I'm using a cube cover to store this cube. Yeah, this one has been my main since 2017. At that time, it was the best 9x9 on the market, but now I think it's an extremely outdated model, and it's more or less been superseded by the MF9, which I didn't buy. I can't sub 12 on the Huanglong, but on the MF9, when I borrowed my friend's MF9 M, I actually sub 10 on it. But even then, I'm not that set on buying my own MF9. And the reason behind that is just, I do find that the MF9 is really squared off on its inner layers. It's basically the same complaint I have about the MF8, but multiplied by the fact that I'm not that big of an odd cube fan, so I don't really want to invest extra money into a non-WCA odd cube. I actually went ahead to design my own 9x9 with rounder pieces and a stronger anti-pop design than the original MF9. But I never got ahead to printing it because that was just really expensive. And for 10x10, I used the Weilong 10 M. So this one is quite similar to my 8x8 in a sense where I magnetize every layer with weak magnets, except the middle, which is unmagnetized. And the Weilong 10 is basically the best non-WCA cube I've ever used. Maybe rivaled by the Weilong 12, but I didn't magnetize that. But I do think that if I magnetize that, it would kind of turn into this, because this one without magnets is quite similar to what the Weilong 12 would be without magnets as well. But honestly, for the Weilong 10, like, it's just really smooth, really stable. It hardly ever pops or deforms, and it has ridiculously fast turning. I would say this is pretty much near perfect for a non-WCA big cube, with the only flaw being reverse corner cutting, which is really inevitable at this stage because the pieces are going to be so small. Not just on the outside, but if you were to go inside, the pieces, as you know, pieces are contain a head, a stem, and a root. Right? The stem is going to be the narrowest parts, and for cubes of this size, the stem is going to be so narrow. There's really a limit to how much you can round that. There's a few possible video ideas I want to release in 2021, which includes like 4x4 tutorials, probably more Mac series, because I do have a design that I kind of want to push. That includes a 4x4 with dual adjustment system. I actually figured out a way to do that. And as for tutorials, I'll probably target the beginner tutorial first, because for the advanced tutorial, which is what I originally planned to do, I will only want to release that if I manage to hit sub 43 for cube reviews. That really depends on the hardwares. One thing I noticed about hardwares in general is that the even years like 2016, 2018, 2020 tend to have more releases, while the odd years have a little bit less. So for 2021, I don't think that many cubes are going to come out, but that's just a prediction, and 2022 will probably be the next big wave. But of course, that's just extrapolating on the trend. No guarantee that the future is going to follow that.